Okay. Well, welcome, Michelle. Were you born in Canada or abroad?
No, I was born here. My
Yeah.
mother came to Canada. My parents came to Canada in the 50s.
Did your parents and grandparents in any generation immigrate to Canada?
And so my mother came in 1952. My father came in 1956. And they were among the first of their families to come. So their families came in I want to say the early 60s. So the rest of my mother's extended family, like her siblings came, and my father's one sibling came over, and his mother came over in the 60s. So they were like among the first people to come here from their families.
Did they face any obstacles with the immigration or in Canada once they came here that especially stuck out?
Um, Well, I think they were really lucky. Part of the reason they came here, came to Hamilton specifically, which is where I'm from, is because there was already a network of families and relations that were here. So when they came, I'm pretty sure that the people, the family and the relations that they had here helped them get jobs. And they also, like my mother stayed in the house of, like it was like I think a family friend. She came with her two siblings, so they had accommodation set up, and they probably got assistance with getting work. But also there was already a really tight community. Like in Hamilton, there are literally thousands of people that came from my mother's village that are in Hamilton, like hundreds and hundreds of people from their particular village. So, I mean, I can't speak for my mother. I'm sure that there were problems, but I know that because they had this network, it was a lot easier for them, for sure.
When they came here, did they bring anything important with them?
Um, well, they didn't have a lot of money. They probably brought things like, photos, um, kind of jewelry that you inherit when you reach certain milestones, like religious milestones. Like when you're baptized, you usually get kind of a gold medallion. When you're, yeah, I mean, things that were valuable. They didn't really have a lot. They didn't have a lot of money. I wouldn't characterize them as poor, but I mean, they had just like a very simple lifestyle. So I think they brought kind of a minimum of stuff with them for sure. Yeah.
So then how do you identify with the cultural background and heritage?
Well, I see myself as a Canadian of Italian descent. If I went to Italy, they would not consider me Italian. In fact, unless this has changed, I remember them kind of referring to Canadians as Americani, like they don't even distinguish between Canadians and Americans, and they don't really. My limited interaction with my relations back home they really don't consider you to be Italian, because most of us don't speak the language as well. Well, I don't speak the language as well as I could. Um, and we're very, we're just I do identify definitely as an Italian Canadian, but I know that I am very distinctly different from people in Italy. I just think we have like a different mindset, a completely different mindset.
Are there any traditions that you still follow that have been brought back from Italy?
Yeah, so Italians are very family oriented. I am very family oriented. I see my extended family at least once a month, usually more because they're mostly in Hamilton. They still do. When my father was alive, this is a very long time ago, but he would make wine in the backyard. He would make tomato sauce, and now my brother has retained that tradition. He still makes tomato sauce every 2 years or so. Um, we not so much me because I'm not religious, but my cousins, my brother and my cousins, they're still observant Italian. still observant Catholics, so they baptize their kids, they have communions, they have confirmations, they celebrate that. Um, for myself, I've tried to retain the language. I'm not very good, but I've retained some of the language and um, the cooking. Obviously, I'm very interested, but I think the most important aspect is just kind of the sense of family and obligation to each other, which I think is very strong.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you've already partially answered this one, but did you grow up speaking a language or dialect other than English or French at home?
Yes, until I went to kindergarten, I spoke Italian. Kindergarten, I spoke Italian. And for a long time, while I was living at home, I was only supposed to speak Italian.
Wow.
Um, but I mean, as I got older, that became more difficult to
Mhm.
to to maintain. Yeah,
Do you find that you wish you tried to keep it up more?
I do, but I mean, it's hard. Like my my brother and sister who live in Hamilton with my mother, because they have almost daily contact with her, their Italian is much, much better. And my brother works in an environment where a lot of Italian is spoken. So their language skills are really strong. But I left home when I was 19. And it's the kind of thing, if you don't keep it up, like if you don't speak it every day, it's very difficult to retain. So I wish that I was a better, had better language skills, but they're not great. They're just like very basic, like ordering in a restaurant kind of Italian.
You also mentioned that when your parents came to Canada, they grew up in a community based with a lot of other Italians from the same village or community.
Yeah.
So, did you grow up or live in an ethnic community of your own heritage or of a different heritage?
Yeah, for sure. When I was not so much in my neighborhood. In my neighborhood, it was a working class neighborhood, and there weren't that many Italians around. But nor in my grade school, but when I went to high school, because it was a Catholic high school, I was surrounded, like we were probably the majority. There were probably more Italian Canadian kids than there were of any other ethnic group. Like we were mostly Southern European, some Anglo, but like a huge concentration of Italian Canadians. Yeah, tons of us. Yeah.
That's nice. And I feel like it would be like more homey in that sense.
Yeah, you know what? It was. And I think you don't really realize that until then I came to Toronto and I went to school. And then all of a sudden it's kind of like you're the different one. I wasn't accustomed to that. I was accustomed to being like surrounded by people that understood my culture, and our parents have the same background. But then when I went to university, I was more isolated, and I knew very, very, very many fewer Italian Canadians. And then I had to kind of like make a conscious effort to kind of immerse myself in the Italian community, like mostly through literary activities. Then I got to know people that were of a similar.
Did you or your family ever exchange letters with any relatives that were left in Italy, or did everybody all immigrate by the end of the 60s?
I'm sure that my mother did, but I I don't have that kind of relationship with my relations, and I don't have that kind of connection with my Italian relatives. And now it's much more difficult, right? Everything is like, I mean, in terms of like, there's no legacy of letter writing. It's all about, like you're Zooming or you're texting each other, or you're, you know, connecting on Facebook or something like that. So I think that that's kind of a lost art.
Mhm.
It's, I don't know, anybody that does that.
So you've mentioned that you grew up in Hamilton and then you moved to Toronto. A lot of your family on the Italian side is still in Hamilton. So where would you consider home?
Um, I've been here 40 years. So it this is my home now. Like I don't I have lots of family in Hamilton, but I most of my close relationships are in Toronto. Your uncle's family, the Fujimotos, I'm very close to them.
Mhm.
They're here. So I consider Toronto to be my home. Yeah, for sure.
And then finally, is there anything further you would like to add to this story?
Um, I'm just very pleased that you have an interest in this. Like, I'm very excited by that. And I just love when people are interested in Italian culture and they want to experience it, and they love the food and the language and the history. And I'd love to share that with people. So I'm really glad that you asked me to do that.
Well, thank you.
It makes me feel really good that you wanted to do that. I
Of
appreciate
course.
that. Yeah.